minutes later, I got an email from BlurredCon that they're live July 16th through 18th.
Oh,
That's too soon. That's too soon.
yeah.
No,
Same
yeah.
for me. Same for me.
The train thing.
Very cool. Oh, wow. Nice. Mm-hmm. Ah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Mm.
I think October is our first planned like public space event, like that bigger event. So yeah, we're holding out too.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we got plans. Like the first thing I do when I arrive is eating smoke. Yeah, smoke brisket. Yep,
Oh,
yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. That speaks
Although
to my
I-
Texas heart.
Yeah. Oh, I love barbecue. I basically spent like 2.5 weeks on a road trip throughout the southern United States, and all I ate was barbecue. And
Amen.
I was like,
Oh.
you know what? I had ribs one night, and I was like, I'm gonna have to have ribs on every single night in every single state I go to just to see who had the best ribs.
You have to do
That's
it.
the thing you do.
You have to do it.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, like the other guy who shares my brain at work is a big smoked meat person, and so
Oh.
last year for my birthday, I got the same pellet smoker that he has because he can talk me through every single thing step by step, and I'm
Perfect.
like so brand new to this. Yeah, and then because I work at Cisco, there's a instant messenger room
Boom.
that is barbecue, smoking, and something at Cisco, and it is nothing but pictures of meat all day. It's like 900 of us in that room,
Yeah.
and just comparing recipes. So
Welcome to the
Nice.
pre-show, everybody. We're talking about food, but like, see.
By the way,
so-
to answer to say it though, to answer anyone's question, the best for best ribs, Nashville, best sauce in Dallas. Just saying.
There you go.
See, I was
There you
actually
go.
going to say, best ribs I think I've had. It's actually Texas. Best sauce, Kansas City.
Oh, that's
There
a good one too. Yeah.
I got what had happened, Mayhem, was that this is all on Windows. I had a recent Windows update, and of course what it did was it went through and reset everything to default. So since I'm streaming here, it went to default, and now it did that. But anyway, yeah. So my first experience with Kansas City barbecue was when I was dating at the time my first wife, and I said I was craving barbecue, and she was like, "So you've never been to Kansas City for barbecue, have you?" And I said, "Nope." She said, "Get in the car." And we're driving. We are in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, "Where are you taking me?" And it was something like 30 degrees outside, like 20 or 30 degrees outside. So we had the heat cranked up and the windows rolled up. and suddenly coming through the windows, I smelled this intense, beautiful scent of wood, and I went, "What is that?" And she said, "You're about to find out." And we pull into this, and suddenly light in the middle of nowhere. There's light, and there's this like in this little cubby hole of Kansas City was this little shack called Smokehouse Barbecue. Mm-hmm. They were selling their sauce by the mason jar. And oh God, I made that stuff last.
I bet.
Good on you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Right. That is awesome.
Okay, so for those of you who are joining us and you're wondering, okay, I recognize some of you, don't recognize all of you, and why are we talking about food? Okay, this is not a food podcast. We promise you that. This is just the
can be.
Aww.
Could
all right,
be.
well, I'm gonna go.
It could be. We could be. We could completely turn this around and turn this into a beer, barbecue, and bourbon podcast. That's an idea, guys. Let's table that for later.
It'll cost us Brandon though. So
that's true. That's true.
That's true. I mean, well, see, we'll just keep the podcast going until that'll be the series finale when Brandon can be able to join into the podcast.
Brandon can produce it. He can do it as part of his graduation from his high school. He can produce the podcast. B3.
He's not enthused. He's not enthused.
All right. First off, everyone, thank you for joining us. This is a live recording of Happy Hour from the Tower. Yes, it's a lot more raw than we do it, and the reason why we're doing it this way is because due to DMCA rules, even if I play the theme of Happy Hour from the Tower, they take out our audio. So I can't do any music. I got to do it all in post, and that's the way we're going to be doing it. But I'm going to go on ahead and have all of us introduce ourselves before. We introduce our special guest here, and also before we actually get to the recording aspect of the podcast itself. So first off, my name is T Morris. You can call me T, or T Monster, or Twitch Dad, and I am one of the hosts of Happy Hour from the Tower. And you can find out more about. We always have the bell. You can find out more about what we do at happyhourfromthetower.com. So that's who I am. I'm one of the hosts. Brandon, please feel free to introduce yourself.
I'm Brandon Kelly, also known as Thermowolf. I do most of just the variety gameplay. I play a lot of things, and that is where I step in on any of these podcasts.
Not gonna lie, when T said, "Brandon, why'd you start off?" I thought you were gonna say, "Hi, I'm Brandon," and that was it.
And that was it.
I felt it would have been awkward. I needed an introduction.
So he's on it. Steve, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, commonly known as Blind Gamer. I'm an accessibility advocate and consultant in the video game industry. Worked with Ubisoft, EA, and Naughty Dog on a few games. And yeah, I'm a content creator, streamer, and also play with this Palooka, where we play Destiny together, and these other folks as well.
Yeah. Steve is also a regular guest and sometimes pinch hit host on the show. And next to Steve, we've got.
So I'm Nick. I'm the resident Titan main and default lore dude. Also, proud father of Brandon, who plays every game under the sun. And because it's working the way now that it was supposed to work, I'll take credit for also being the guy who ropes in interviews. So there you go.
There's that. he is the guy who gets us esteemed guests like the guest up in the top corner. And and you're gonna get an introduction from him again, Chad. But let's go on ahead and let's have our guest introduce himself informally, so that when we get into the show formally, you know who we're talking about, and as well as what kind of questions to ask him when we get into the interview. So, guest, please introduce yourself.
That would be me, I'm guessing. So, yes, I'm Kevin McMullen. I am a voiceover director, among other things, but specifically why I'm here today is to chat all things Destiny in the process, especially this last year that we've been through. But as will happen, as was shown before we even got started, is we might diverge into brisket and other things too. So we'll see what happens.
It is now going to be my goal to be able to make sure that we tangent off to brisket in this.
I was born and raised in Texas. Brisket is the only real barbecue as far as I'm concerned.
Hot damn! Not that shredded crap.
Shots fired, though. Shots fired.
Not that shredded crap. We're talking. You slice that sucker. You don't shred it. You slice it.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Okay.
Nice and fuck.
Now, to be clear, barbecue is incredible. I love food. We can talk about it all, and I really don't hold any grudges against any food. But Texas brisket is where it's at for me. Anyway,
Damn.
Hot takes from the tower. Here it is. Hot takes from the tower.
Here's the question: how long do you smoke it for? That's
19
the real.
to 21.
There you
19
go.
to
There you
21.
go. That's what I like to hear. All right.
Yeah.
So,
And in a real pit, by the way, too.
Yes.
well,
but-
you know, I mean,
If you can.
HOA,
Yeah.
HOA would probably be really pissed at me if they're like, "Why is T digging a giant hole?" And I'm going to be like, "Well, no brisket for you then."
You just give them a sample. Give them a sample, and they'll understand.
All
I'm
right.
doing this for the neighborhood.
doing that. America. All right.
America.
All right. So for those of you who want to hear this this final show edited, some of that I'm going to keep for the end, like a little Easter egg. But we're just going to go on ahead and we're going to bring us in, and we're going to do our interview with Kevin McMullen. So if you have any questions about voice direction, voice talent, voiceovers in video games, whether it be Destiny or if you want to find out some of the other games that Kevin has done, by all means, that's why I'm keeping an eye on the chat for everybody. We've got questions, but if you've got questions and Kevin's able to answer them, we're gonna do it on this episode. Yes,
And that's
Nick.
the caveat. That's the caveat. He can't answer all of your questions. There are
No
certain
apologies.
things that Kevin is not allowed to do. There are disclaimers and
Yes.
and NDAs and all the other things that. Listen, if there's one thing I've learned in life, and I know that T can agree with me on this, if you want to get everything and complicated, whatever it is, whatever that statement is, bring the lawyers in.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that. Like
No,
we're
we're
going to
not.
keep it simple, like we did. I think it was episode 42 that you were with us last time,
Yep.
Kevin, and it really was just story time with the beard, and it was
It's great.
it was so good. Yeah, we went like
Kind of fun.
that. Like I know we sent questions over, but it was like that wasn't written down anywhere.
and we're thrilled to have you back.
Awesome. Let's
right.
keep going. Yeah, so-
All right, everyone. So, finally, a new episode. Finally, a new episode of Happy Hour from the Tower in 3.
remember what it's called.
I know. In 3, 2. Welcome. Oh my God. What is it? Wait,
Greetings.
Greetings. It's all over again. Here we go.
Greetings.
Kevin, you got any direction for
Free. That's my direction.
All right. In 3, 2. Greetings, warlocks, hunters, titans, and all the ships at sea. It's time once again for Happy Hour from the Tower, and I am your host, T. Morris. And over to my left,
I'm Brandon Kelly.
and above me,
Steve Saylor?
and next to him,
Nick Kelly.
and our guest. Sign on in.
Hey, I'm Kevin McMullen.
It is so nice to be back. It is so nice, chat, to be back in Happy Hour from the Tower. It is so nice to remember how we bring everybody in to an episode of Happy Hour from the Tower. I gotta get that off my chest. as
Wrong.
well.
That was a weird order.
It really was,
Yeah, I was
wasn't
gonna
it?
say.
We just rolled with it though. We rolled it.
Yeah.
But look, there are consistency in the universe. I have the bell. The bell is eternal. We will always have the plug bell. You can count on that. So chat, yes, we have been away from the mics for a long time. We admit that. It's a little bit of pandemic exhaustion, whatever you want to call it. But we are back. We have a special friend coming in to join us once again, Steve, the Blind Gamer Sailor. Steve, how are you doing today? It's good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just finished a video project that basically has a runtime of 4 hours and 16 minutes, and
epic.
I am excited to be able to talk about Destiny. Although I fully will admit I haven't jumped into the season as much as I wanted to as of yet because Mass Effect Legendary Edition has taken over my life.
Yeah,
And
there is that. I was, yeah. For those of you who might have missed it, everybody, the last Blind Leads the Blind, I was watching. It was the first time I actually watched Steve stream into our stream. Usually, I'm the one that's streaming from Steve on to working with Brandon and the Phil Rossi Scream team with Phasmophobia. But with Steve, he was just I had not seen Steve nerd out that hard in quite some time. I think the last time he nerded out about that, it was there you go. Yeah. He
I
even
got
has-
the N7 helmet for a reason. Although full disclosure, BioWare did send it to me, but still, like this is it.
and
I
to-
love The Mandalorian.
and yes. and to give everybody some incentive, if Steve is gaming with Mass Effect, there is a channel point goal where you can have him wear the helmet for 5 minutes while he plays. So
If you think I was blind before, wait
Yeah.
till you see me with the helmet on.
I mean, it's basically blind leads the blind with blinders on. I mean, that's just a whole new
I
level.
just added a whole new difficulty to the game
Yeah.
that it wasn't even intended.
And now we have with us a very special guest. This is his return appearance on the show. We had him back on the show that answered the questions of life, the universe, and everything, episode 42. It's Kevin McMullen. Kevin, would you please introduce yourself again in a more formal matter, as in who you are and what you do for the Destiny community?
Sure. So, again, I'm Kevin McMullen. I am a voiceover director, and I've been working in the Destiny space for about 5 years. And in fact, let me just back it up a little bit just to give a little bit of background here. I started out now many, many years ago. As it turns out, you do get old as you get older, apparently. So either way, many, many years ago, I started out as a composer and sound designer and dialogue director as well at Ensemble Studios. And we were responsible for the Age of Empires series of games. And the last thing we did was Halo Wars before I ended up and that studio shut down, and I ended up coming out to LA about 12 years ago to really focus on dialogue direction and the narrative side of gaming. But either way, all of that still informs kind of how I approach things now. So it's why I always like to touch back to it. Even as a musician, which I am by, I think the first thing I ever did was music. So that I can remember. So it's always been a part of me. And even when I'm directing, I still kind of bring in those elements of how to communicate with performers and things like that. So, but anyway, so yeah, about 12 years ago, I focused specifically on doing voice direction for video games because I am a developer at heart, having been at the studio for 10 years before that. And I really do approach how I look at what we're doing in the booth or in the studio from the game developer and game player's perspective. You just kind of have to do that. You have to know your audience, especially in games because it's so unique. So many of the things we have to serve are really antithetical to telling narratives, which is a real challenge, you know, when you're basically dealing with elements. Heck, I don't know what the percentage would be, but somewhere over half to 80-90% of the stuff you're doing is about telling the player directly what's going on while trying to weave in interesting character arcs and plots and story arcs and things like that. So all of that, specifically in Destiny, is something that really gets explored because they're so heavy into the narrative side of things, into characters. Bungie has been forever, but at the same time, you know, they've also been creating incredible visual worlds and designing incredible levels and spaces and things like that. So it's really hard to get those all to marry, but that's the challenge that kind of gets me up every day. I really like both the performative magic moments that happen in the transient times of being in the studio, and then the things we get to kind of keep permanently around. And that's sort of the experience that everybody has in the project after it's all done. So there's a little bit of a word salad of a background. I don't know which piece I should continue on, or if I'll just stop right there and say, okay, there's a little bit of an introduction.
No, look. Anytime someone gives good interview, we're happy on this podcast. We are always happy on this podcast. We do have, though, plenty of questions. One of which has been bouncing around on the internet. We're gonna let Steve kick that one off.
Okay, so because here's the thing, like watching the trailer for Seasons of the Splicer, I noticed something because I mean, you have to know I come from a radio background, so I do know at least I can be able to, and I used to work with audio a lot, so I can be able to pick up on certain voices and things I can recognize. Ikora, that is not Gina Torres, is it? Like, can you confirm if that is someone else that has been, if Ikora has been recast? We love Gina Torres, but of course, we know that obviously she's a very busy woman, and may not be able to jump into the booth to be able to record something for Destiny. So, can you confirm if that rumor is true? Is it? Do we have a new Ikora?
So you come right out with the question that I have to say no comment to.
Dang it!
Point. So that's there's no issues that I'm hiding or anything like that.
Right.
Sure. We totally
there
understand
are methods
that.
and protocols that I can't speak to. But I will say this: I am very, very excited that Ikora is getting attention again.
Oh hell
Yes, because I'm a diehard warlock. It's the only character I have. It's the only character I play. And it's also for accessibility reasons. Shut up, Nick, and shut up, Brandon. But like,
Eat
I was
your
like,
crayons, Nick.
when are we? I was thinking, I'm like, when are we going to get something with Ikora?
Yeah.
She's been silent for far too long, and I'm like, I just want to hear her
My
voice.
Vanguard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Your
Well,
your Vanguard's been
My
silent.
Vanguard's been silent for a pretty long time.
6 feet under, everybody. 6 feet under. And we
Yeah,
do,
but at
we,
least there's some close with that one.
we do want to make it clear. We know, Kevin, that you have no say in the matter
course,
of
immigrant
casting,
casting.
and
Yeah.
we definitely don't want to get you in trouble. Although I will say, I think it's kind of cool. That's the first no comment we've ever gotten on this show. So we just leveled up, boys. We just leveled up.
Let me replace that, because I did notice that also you did have a bit of recasting with the voice actress Erika Ishii in a recent season. Could you maybe talk about a bit about that in that sort of recasting?
I'm really excited that Erica is with us. So there you go.
Cool.
No, I don't. Now I'm just being. I'm just having fun. I am excited she's with us, and that it is great to have her in the project. I do want to back up and say the interesting thing about a lot of projects, but I think Destiny in particular, especially now that it has some age on it, is there's a lot of characters that come in and out of the mix, and you can't. Yeah. Obviously you can't really make really compelling stories addressing them all at once, right? So we kind of have to take our turn, and then also allow new developments to pop in, as well. So because I'll tell you, I want failsafe back. I mean, for me, failsafe.
Okay,
we need more failsafe stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, Joy. Of course, we all love Joy Osmansky and stuff. But
she's the patron saint of this of this podcast. We love her dearly. We love her dearly.
And she's easy to love, because I mean she just brings so much joy, as it were, But either way, with Ada, it's great to have Ada, kind of back and being able to do that, and Ikora, and I would love to have more Devram as well. Is another one that I would love to have back, and stuff. But so we could go on and on about, man, couldn't we have this and this? And we will eventually. Hopefully we just keep this train rolling, because it is nice. And I can tell you this, at least. Here's another tricky thing about doing these, or a tricky thing, I haven't mentioned it yet, but a tricky thing about doing these interviews is, my headspace is in the current headspace, which I can't talk about at all, that we're working on, and that kind of stuff. So I have to be very careful. So you'll pardon me if I'm being extra careful about what I'll even try to talk about, because I don't want to give away anything. But I will say this. I am really excited with kind of what we've done in the last year, and the platform that not only the characters and stuff, but, becoming more of a straight up seasonal game, right? These seasonal releases, and really leaning in on that really has pushed the way of telling stories in the narrative team. It pushes them to the very brink, for one thing. I mean, it's amazing what all they take on, because you're constantly, getting content out there now. It's not kind of big box release, DLC, maybe another DLC, and get back to it. So it is a constant thing, but that is letting us take a lot of kind of more narrowly focused, really dive into a specific, character arc or something like that. And so I think it's really beautiful the way storytelling is kind of evolving within the Destiny space. And I think having more Ikora right off the top is a great way to kind of really lean into that, to having her come back and push into that kind of thing.
One other person that you brought back that I do want to say thank you to. Nick knows where I'm going with this.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
I mean, I've been a fan of hers since 24. I think I fell in love with her in The Expanse, and the fact that Sheree Agudishelu is back. Just put a phone book in front of her, have her read it. We'll be happy.
Dude, 100%. She has, first off, she is the epitome of grace. Her. Yeah. Just, I mean, everything you would think about, when she gets onto a scene, in The Expanse or whatever it might be, there's just all of a sudden a richness comes into it before she even says a word.
Yeah.
And then she starts speaking with that incredible. I
don't think Nolan North can reproduce that. I don't think Nolan North can reproduce that.
He would love to take the challenge on, for sure. But
he's got that kind of an ego to do it too.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put it past him being able to pull it off. But,
sure, yeah.
but Shorey is just, she is so awesome, and just a pleasure to work with, and a really, really good person. So
sweet.
Yes, happy to have been able to have her back in the mix too, for sure.
I do want to ask actually as well, kind of shooting into that. Essentially, one thing that I've really kind of noticed, especially with the past seasons, is we in Destiny generally. I mean, this is more from my perspective. I've only played since Destiny 2 Forsaken, so I mean, these guys, like other guys, have far more pedigree in the game than I do. However, from my perspective, generally the only times we've ever really had any sort of character development or anything in regards to we've always had like the nameless bad guys, and then we have the named villain. And what I've been seeing mostly in a lot of the recent seasons is that we're getting these characters that add a lot more to the nameless baddies, quote unquote, and actually adding a lot of emotional presence for those characters. Like, I mean, we'll get into it when we get into it, but like, for instance, I just jumped into the new season, and I was listening to the logs from Ito, like in the last city, and I'm just like hearing her talk about the Elixir and the Fallen, and kind of how it's been from their perspective. Like, I never expected that kind of emotion to be had for people, like basically a group of aliens that I would just be shooting for the past 2-3 years or whichever. So how do you kind of work with that in adding these new emotional resonance to these new characters and to these races that we've known for so long?
Well, see, that is again part of what I think is really interesting about where Destiny is going. Is that the narrative team is really focusing on, I mean, it's kind of the wrong word to use to say humanize, but there is that kind of element going into the different alien races as well as, you know, the more human type characters, because I think in general audiences are really accepting a lot of depth within characters and gray area. And I think gray area, well, I mean, shoot, we're the light and the dark, and there's gray in between. I mean, that those kinds of perspectives are already inherent within the Destiny sort of setting. And now you get to have these things where a villain isn't 100% villain. It's kind of like, you know, I'm sure it's been going, storytelling's been going a long time with gray areas and characters, but as far as sort of mass audiences and things, I think movies like Black Panther did a really good job of kind of bringing that to the fold, where it's like, you're watching and go, I kind of understand why he's so pissed off. You know, he might be not doing everything exactly the way you should, not totally high moral ground all the time. But that allows you, when you open up that allows both your good guy characters to open up into something a little more grounded, and allows other stories to come in. So, because when you do take the perspective of like the Fallen have had an incredible history of experience, you know, even with the Traveler and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's so deep. You need to, it's not useful to just kind of ignore that or say it up front and then just come around the corner shooting all the time. It's really nice to be, it gives us so much to work with when we do that. And so I say that saying, like, when we, the Ikora stuff, we were talking about Ikora, I think we've opened her up. I mean, we were definitely with Zavala. We've been pushing to push Zavala into spaces where he's having to have almost these existential crises and things like that, and kind of having to face certain decisions he's made in the past, and how is he going to move forward and work with the people he's working with and that kind of stuff. So it really opens up some depth when you do that. And so I'm really pleased that Bungie is and their narrative team has chosen to go that route to allow for that kind of thing. It can make things confusing at times too. I mean, it gets more messy the more, you know, but then,
but that's good storytelling.
Life is messy.
I think good storytelling should be messy. And you know, messy, complicated, if you will, that's another word that people have been using. And I love that. I've been saying since since Beyond Light dropped, I feel like, you know, and this is not because you're here, I'm just going to come out and say it. I just think everything, the voice direction, the storytelling, the casting, everything has been, you know, the last time I remember feeling this good about an expansion was Rise of Iron. And and these guys can attest, you know, the three of us, we would spend hours in Rise of Iron. And it just
hours in Archon's Forge.
One Archon's Forge, yeah. But I mean, but I remember, but I think Steve is very lucky to have come in with Forsaken, because that was a real turning point for Destiny 2. And since then, it's just been the storytelling's just been getting stronger and stronger. Beyond Light was amazing, and Season the Chosen was on point. And right now, Splicer's coming out really hard out of the box. So really well done. I think Nick, I wanted to.
Yeah. So to sort of sum up everything that everybody just mentioned is, like, it's the gray area, right, Kevin, to your point, as opposed to how can we make it light and even more dark? Because for the longest time, and everybody who's listened to this podcast knows, like the thing that I was just like, oh god, the bad guy's voice is even lower than the last bad guy. Like it was Gaul, and then it was Zol, and then it was like pretty soon, it's going to be notes that none of us want to hear.
Brown notes.
And then,
The brown note. I was
brown
just
note.
going to say the
And
brown
then,
note.
bam, Aramis. I'm like, holy,
Oh,
to
Yeah.
me, the most refreshing villain, if you will, because T even kind of talked around it, but made the point that the best villains are the ones who think that they're the hero, right? Killmonger, like the same thing. And so that was, I think, I don't know if that was a conscious, let's go a different direction with the characters from that perspective. I don't know if you had any say in it or anything like that, but I'd like to hear kind of, when did we decide it wasn't, here's 128 box of crayons and they start at dark gray and just progressively get darker.
Well, what's funny about games is it's always 1,000 other influences beyond whatever discipline you're approaching, right? So we can sit here and focus on the narrative and what allowed you to do that and that. Well, we're beholden first off to design, right? And that's, again, is why games are really unique and interesting, I think exciting to work in, because you're within environments that you can't tell stories in any other way, in any other media. You do have linear A to B storytelling that you have in little cinematics and things, but that might be at most 10% of a game or something like that in general. A lot of it is left up to what the player is going to do. So you have these boundaries or influences. If we were here talking about all the art, we could talk just in as depth about the art and why did you make a decision to do this and this. Inevitably, it will always go back to design. It'll go back to, well, the needs of the game needed this, but you try to figure out how to get the depth within your discipline as well. And I think the depth within storytelling is exactly the gray area. It just really is. And so I think along the way, as you're building a game, and especially a game that exists over the course of years, you start to get opportunities that you may have wanted to take from the beginning, but it never allowed you to. You might have needed to be a more narrow path, for a lack of a better, description of it, in order to pull off the game design goals, right? Because we can't stomp all over. We can't confuse the mission design or the overall game design. We can't confuse it with elements just because we want to hear them or have them that way. By the way, T, I think you were the one who said, did you start on Rise of Iron? Is that what you were saying?
No, I said the last time I remember being this thrilled.
Right, that's what it was.
Content.
That was your Rise of Iron. I wanted to say that was my first project with them. So thank you for starting.
Oh,
there.
wow.
Hey, no lie, man. That was my goat. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, Taken King." I'm like, "No, man, Rise of Iron." I mean, everything about that expansion just resonated with me and the three of us. And when Steve came on, Steve can attest. Steve's just like, "Oh yeah, T won't shut up about Rise of Iron." And then we got into Beyond Light. Actually, no, it was Shadowkeep. Shadowkeep was when I think Steve and I were like beyond the point of no return, because Nick was laughing at the two of us because it's like, "No, you go first. No, you go first. I'm scared. Hold me, Steve." And
it was like that. Although for me, it was more of like, oh, cool, we're at the moon, because I've never been to the moon. I've only played from Forsaken forward. So I was like, I didn't know any of all that stuff. But I think the one that sold me the most, was Beyond Light and Season of the Chosen. I still say, I think Season of the Chosen has been my absolute favorite season of all. It's the one that I kind of like. I don't know what it was, whether it was the gameplay loop or just the story aspect of it. I think, or a combination of both. But essentially for me, I was like, that's the one I was like, I really wanted to be able to dive into. And I will and T helped me out with being able to do this. Essentially, that is my first seal ever, was completing Season of the Chosen. So nice. I am very much like, I love it, and I love the direction that essentially, like, where like all it's been going. And T's definitely right, or like you guys are right, like it's basically from Forsaken forward has been this kind of like really cool trajectory that I'm glad I got to jump in at that point, because like being able to be a part of this story is just been really, really cool. And again, it's just sort of like the storytelling and the voice direction and the acting has been like ever increasing of like, how can you top this? Oh, that's how you top it. Okay, all right. And then it just that's like a itself.
Hang on. I want to sneak this in first, Kevin, because I want to get some hype in chat for this, because I've been saying this since the beginning of the pandemic. The fact that you all, and like you said earlier, Kevin, you all have been now you're doing seasonal stuff, so there's a lot more demand on you all. But the fact that you all are doing this during an effing pandemic, Can we
We'll
get
get
hype
into
in
that.
chat?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, we're
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
going to
yeah.
get into that. That's what
Yeah.
I'd like to get into now. Actually, is just talking about how amazing this all has been, because there have been games during 2020 that did not stick the landing, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to name any because I've already got a video on YouTube about one of them. But I will say that there is the fact that Destiny has been so consistent and churning out some incredible content. I know that the first trip that Steve and I took together, I knew the first time I took the run in Presage onto the Glycan, I said, "Oh, Steve's gonna hate this. Steve's gonna hate this so much."
Yeah.
But
God.
let's talk a little bit about pandemic. Brandon, could you lead us in with your question about the how you had to make that adjustment?
Yeah, so big change, obviously. How early into lockdown did you know that like it would take a while? It'd be a while until people would be not recording in closets and actually back in studio.
Right away, frankly, because okay, I'm going to speak for a little bit here. Feel free to just jump in
Go,
anytime
baby.
or
Go,
whatever.
go.
Because
The platform is yours.
It's still something I think we're all processing. One of the interesting things about the pandemic is it truly was global. Like, in the sense of all of us, every single person on the planet could say, boy, what is time anymore? I don't even understand time anymore. It just became this repetitive sort of thing. And yesterday could have been 3 months ago and vice versa.
Flat circle.
Whatever it might
It's
be.
all
right?
Mondays. Yep.
Flat circle, exactly. But like to have that experience globally, right? And so when you're starting to address things, anytime you find yourself a lot of times getting very myopic. We were very myopic anyway. I mean, it's not hard to get within yourself really quick, right? And so when you're talking about some of these questions of like, well, how are we going to move forward? Oh, we need to do this and this. You're constantly tempering it with, well, shoot, what the heck's going to happen to the world? What's happening with my family? What's happening with my extended family and my friends and all that kind of stuff? And all of that was woven in. So every time you're addressing an issue that normally under more isolated circumstances would be like a game issue or a development issue, it's instantly tied to life issues and global issues. Even the stuff we're talking about, like recording in a closet, that very quickly is like, it's all tied to that moment. So the vibe and the sort of the energy surrounding every decision being made was new and awkward. It was really strange. So I think right away there was the gut feeling of, I don't know if we're ever going to do this again, right? I think a lot of us had that feeling of the first time you couldn't go to your regular hangout or a movie or whatever it might be, and you start putting two and two together every day. You wake up and go, oh, this thing is now affected. Everything was affected, right? So, but I will say this too. We hit the ground running, and I am very, very proud of our specific recording team. And I'm going to give a shout out here to one of the members at Bungie. I could shout out everybody because everybody deserves it. But specifically, the dialogue lead there is a fella named Adam Croft. And he and I right away were like, what can we do? We had everything lined up in February to start recording in March, right? And to do the stuff that's now been released. Actually, I think it was Shadow Keep. I'm sorry, it is all a jumble. Right? So, and well, either way, I won't tangent too far yet. But either way, so we're like, we need, what can we do? I instantly started walking around my house, putting myself into different closets, making little videos to think I'm going to have to ask actors who, heck, some of them have recording equipment at home. Most of them don't. And especially when you get into on-camera people versus voiceover people, the on-camera folks really don't tend to have any kind of like even just a quiet corner to record voiceover because they're not doing voiceover auditions that they're regularly submitting and that kind of stuff. So wholly new experience for people to even be thinking about mics or gosh, a preamp. What's that? So I instantly started going around the house and filming like, here's how you can set up in a closet with just clothes around you and this distance from the mic and this, and coming up with sort of tutorials. And I can't tell you the number of actors in the evenings I'd be online with, walking them through their house and walking them around to be like, okay, this is the setup we're going to do. We also needed to do, thankfully, I am a musician and I record and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking around my setup here. You'll see me pointing at things off screen. But I was able to, I run 2 systems when I'm doing the Bungie stuff, especially. I run 2 systems so I can have what I like to do, even in the before times when we would have somebody remote in. If we were recording somebody and they were in London at the time, but we needed to get it done, so we're in LA.
4 times.
Yes, exactly. So we would always remote in folks, but I still would try to build an environment that was like our studio environment, where ostensibly we have people who are in an open, isolated channel, which would be the control room, and then an isolated, closed, only speaking through talkback, the booth side of things. Well, in this kind of recording, we really had to take that to an extreme, where we're running 3 or 4 streams at once, because and this is all stuff that me and Adam especially came up with in the beginning, of just random ideas to see if we could get this done. So I'm running right now. They use Microsoft Teams. We used to use Lifesize and other things, but all the Bungie folks are in Teams. So is our note taker and our engineer, and then I'm running a separate channel to the talent, and without getting too deep into all the different audio flows and things, basically we can keep it open to where all of Bungie and me and everybody, we can talk openly even while the recording's going on, and then we talk directly to the actors when we need to do that as well, and then I can bring them in the mix so everybody can talk all together. It's exactly like as if you go into a studio and the clients in the control room with you, the talents in the booth. But either way, so all these things that we needed to think about, and then we're going to be recording in different spaces and different acoustic spaces and things like that. So even if you do get in a closet, it's still not the same controlled space that we have. Right. We put together kits with a computer, a preamp, and a mic that we would send out to Seattle for for Brandon or for Richard, or Kirsten as well. Though Kirsten has a booth in her place, so she already had that going. But I'll give a specific example of what it was like to walk an actor around, because I think this was fun. With Lance in particular. Okay, so Lance, his life to the internet is through his iPad. He always has his iPad on him or whatever, but he doesn't tend to work on laptops and things like that. So, in fact, we were using his wife's laptop. I finally got to meet her as well, virtually or whatever, and she's lovely, and she helped us out. Like, that's the thing, and I think we can all attest to this. Being at home, you end up needing support from your family members as well, too, right? So you'd have people walk in or whatever, or help you out in this case. But Lance originally started out just in his office where their computers are. It makes total sense. But the office wasn't going to work. It's way too ringy or whatever. So I asked him to just kind of walk around. We ended up in a walk-in closet for him that he's used to that point for all sorts of different projects now or whatever. Mm-hmm. But a funny little aside, I think he wouldn't mind me saying this. We'll find out. But either way, I love Lance, by the way. He has just been a joy to work with as well. He's a true gem of a person. And a great actor as well. So we ended up in the closet, and he's sitting there. It's actually more of his wife's closet, and he noticed a lot of price tags on the clothes, and he was like, "These haven't even been worn yet." And he was like, I don't want to be in the middle of domestic issues or whatever, but no, it was all in good fun. And his great. But you walk into this closet, and it turns out we didn't have to treat it much at all. It's like, wow, we can get away with something here.
Well, and that's the thing. It's both exhilarating and heartbreaking, because in this book, we write about everything that you guys have been doing and everything you've been talking about, because there's an entire section on, okay, here's a cheap way to make, I have comforters hanging in this studio. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the fact that you all were doing this, the fact that you were walking Lance Reddick, and he's like, wow, my closet actually works. And why are the goddamn price tags still on this thing? Honey, you better get off here. That's amazing to me. And I'm like, you realize right now, I think you've got a second generation of podcasters now that you have personally coached, because you had to basically say, all right, we're gonna MacGyver the shit out of this, and just it really is. And the thing is, I haven't, as being an audiophile, I'm sure Steve can attest too, I have really not noticed much of a difference.
I think I noticed once where there was like one line where it sounded a little bit different, like in the middle of the line, but that literally has only been once throughout the entire year.
Well,
like
I appreciate
one line.
that, because the variety of recording circumstances you find yourself in for the same thing is just it couldn't be more varied, you know. And then not to mention that we, you know, especially when people could start filming again and stuff, a lot of you know, Oded would be in Toronto, Showray's in Toronto, you know, so we're working out hotel room setups and things like that to do releasable things that are supposed to sit side by side with the other stuff we did. Now, there's a couple things audio wise that you can be thinking about. By the way, and this was early on, actors started going, oh, I can do more from home. And yes, you can. There is still no substitute for being in person. There is just none. There never will be.
No.
Especially as a director, I communicate very much in vibes too. To get all hippy dippy about it, it's like there's a very much physical communication that comes in and communicating where we're going and how I lock in with different actors and stuff. And I was missing a lot of that. Now, luckily, most in Destiny specifically, most of the talent we're working with, I've already worked with in person and stuff. So that's great. We have hooks. We already know how to kind of work with each other. So that was nice. That helped mitigate some of this. If this was an all new cast, it would have been its own challenge. But other things audio that you can trick things up with is first off, most of Destiny is coming through radio, right? Most of the stuff is coming through while you're boots on the ground in the mission. We're hearing conversations and being told things while we're going along. Yes, we have cutscenes and all that stuff. Then we also have the benefit of a lot of people have at least a very basic effect added to them, right? If it's not a total effect, like, you know,
XO
something really messing with it. Yeah, exactly. So you can vary some of the artifacts. I mean, the first thing that happens when you record in a non-traditional space is you hear the room, okay, right, in some sort of way. And like educating actors or people who really don't think about acoustics, and you really don't think about acoustics until you have to, right? Most people don't. But you realize really fast about how much it's like water, right? So how much a little hole will let it escape out. And then also any sort of hard surface, wherever it is going to come back here. So you get, and I'm pointing here at my microphone right now. So either way, a lot of times people would start out, they'd get, oh, I can buy, you know, $150 little wraparound that'll help soundproof it. First off, it's not soundproofing at all. It's acoustic controlling, but also this does nothing for things coming back here. And if you bounce it off a surface, it can find itself back here, you know, milliseconds late, which start canceling out frequencies and all that kind of stuff. So for those of us with those kinds of ears, you know, we're hearing that left and right when we're recording this. And I had to bite my tongue so many times as somebody who does listen with engineers' ears and just go like, this is okay. We're accepting this. We're accepting it. It's okay. We're going to get, you know, and then we just got better and better at helping, you know, people know how to think about their own spaces, which is great. So now the difference now between just 12 months ago and how so many actors are aware of those kinds of things, I think will only improve what it's like when we're back in the studio. So they can be addressing things the engineers have been telling them from the beginning, but now they have it internalized. Yeah. So I think it's really great. It's kind of, I mean, I'm a liberal arts guy, right? So it's like it kind of is that element of, we'll have a piece of this and a piece of this and you'll be better off for it, right? So a lot of actors have this knowledge base of, now they understand why we're talking about mic access, right? Staying on access with the mic, because it's not necessarily about just wind direction into the mic. It's actually about what frequencies are being picked up more or less and what the angles do and all this kinds of stuff that now they had to touch the mic and do it themselves and touch the gain knob and even know what gain is and decibels and what I go to -12, that's our target. Isn't that really quiet? Well, 0 is too loud. So, you know, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of education that went on and a lot of guesswork on ourselves. But again, I'll just bring it back to, from the get-go, we said we will not allow ourselves to stop. We can't. We need to fall flat on our face by trying rather than just stopping, right? And that's what allowed us to keep going. And I will tell you, I was on another project that was supposed to start right away, and just by its nature and the way they do their development had to stop, and we had no idea when it was going to come back. It ended up coming back. We started recording at the end of May and then into June there, so it was a good couple months from March, you know, that we got it. So that was nice that we got to that. And that was also, boy, we record all around the world. Like,
but I guarantee you, Kevin, I guarantee you, I don't know how deep of an impact you think you've made on these actors, but speaking as an actor who became an audio nerd because of, I mean, I guarantee you right now, the next time Lance Reddick does a live appearance, he's going to walk into a room, he's going, the acoustics are bulls in this room. I mean, he's going to, every one of these actors that you educated, I guarantee you, they're going to, because that was something I noticed when all of us got into podcasting, is now we walk into a room, it's like, we either go, oh man, the sound floor is fantastic here. Or it's like, I can, it's too much, and it's just the little things. It's the little things that's going to make such a big impact.
We'll be at a live show. We'll be at a live show, and Brandon will lean over to me and just go 2K, and I go, yeah, that's the ring right there.
Yep.
I mean, plus as well, like stuff like that, like knowing sort of a little bit of the technical side of it kind of also helps improve their empathy with the engineer to a certain degree, because at least they understand what they're having to be able to do. But then also it's like it helps improve their performance, because then they know they'll be able to learn like how the acoustics and the wind direction also works with that, so they know how to be able to like manipulate the mic to be able to get that exact performance that they're looking for. And I think that's kind of like the side benefit of the whole thing. And that's really, really cool.
I can tell you, Steve, I can tell you that the minute when the last album that we were recording vocals on, where it went from the engineer going, click, you can do that better, to me going, him going, what do you think? And I went, I can do that better. Like I know that moment because I learned it from sessions with him ahead of time, and it was like I completely agree that it just adds to the perspective. I think that's a huge thing.
So, so we have got to take a break. Otherwise, this is going to be a two-parter show. Yeah, I know. Hey, we've been nearly going for an hour, my friend. We've been nearly going for an hour, and I am.
It's me. You know that I talk
on. I love it. Just in that last response, Kevin, you knocked off like 4 questions, and it's like, okay, let's keep going. But no, we got to take a break, because we do have, and when we get back from break, we do have a question from chat, and we also have more stuff to ask Kevin right after this break. And we're clear. Yeah, I had a timer going, and it was like
happy brisket from the tower.
And I was like, okay, we're now. I stopped the timer 10 minutes ago, and I set the timer at 30 minutes. I'm just gonna wait to find a break, and I'm just like, maybe this will be a 2 hour.
No.
I apologize for throwing that Ikora question at you at the very beginning. I thought that was going to be like
first one,
I thought there was going to
baby.
be more public knowledge at that point, because I'm like, I could tell the difference. I know the difference.
Yep.
But that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hands off, and remember, we're still streaming, so we're gonna leave.
Leave that. So can
we
we ask about cast instead of recast, like it for the characters who have come up? Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, just specifically with that one, only because it hasn't been addressed yet by Bungie.
Okay.
It's not that there is no issues whatsoever. Everybody is cool. It's all good.
Great.
It's just about protocol. And then, but yeah, we can certainly talk about anybody we already know and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, fair enough. I apologize. I thought it actually was public at that point, because like now that the season's already started, it's like I thought that was.
I mean, well, if by public you mean there's 75 guesstimates on Reddit, then yeah.
Right, that's the thing. What isn't public is the Bungie response. Right.
The Bungie response. Gotcha.
The Bungie
That's what I'm
response, exactly.
to.
So anyway, so chat, for those of you who are just joining, first off, thank you, Panic, for the update. Glad to hear that your MRI came back clean. That's awesome. Little Atari, I'm hoping that my mic issues are going to be better.
No. What Atari means we're not clear, as in we're at a break. This is
no. We're clear, and then I'm going to take this audio and in post, Atari, I'm going to pop in a quick promo, probably from the good folks over at Ritual Motion, and Command Ritual.
We're still on stream, but we're not on podcast.
Right. This is the part we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about brisket, and we're going to talk about barbecue because reasons. Anyway, yeah. So for those of you who are just joining us, that is Kevin McMullen up there. He is the voiceover director for for Destiny. He's been the voiceover director since Rise of Iron, and this is his return visit to the show, and already we're reminded of how much we love having him on this show, because I love the behind the scenes stuff. I've always been a sucker for behind the scenes stuff.
Do you have a beard oil of choice, Kevin?
Here's the thing about the beard. I don't do anything to it, and this one I've had for close to 14 years, I think, and it just breaks, it falls off, it does whatever it wants to do. I put a comb through it after the shower, and then that's it, and it's been that way forever. That's why it's not a terribly healthy beard, but As long as I'm not shaving my face every day, I'm a happy person. So.
You
Oh,
know,
I hear you on that one.
at
Oh,
least you can
I
do the
hate
length.
shaving my face.
At least you can
Yeah.
do the length there
It's
because
a neck.
when I tried to do so I was in a Wild West production of Taming of the Shrew, and I wanted to
Ooh.
have it was good fun, and I wanted to have a beard like that, but I found out the hard way that my beard didn't grow down, it grew out.
Out. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
sure.
the same with mine.
And
yeah.
it looked like I had a tribble right around my mouth, and I mean, it was the beard got so thick that I could literally slap myself against my beard and I wouldn't make contact.
Ooh,
I mean, it was it was
Yeah.
it was a bit of a safety, but so now I have to keep it. This does take maintenance.
Yeah.
I did want to say though, for those regulars in chat who like to give me shit because I was actually dyeing my beard for recent interviews because I was afraid it was showing off my age. The last interview I did with the place that eventually did hire me, I forgot to dye my beard. So I went in full gray, and I think it was because they were a European company. They were like, we're okay with this guy. You know, he's in his 50s and he knows what Twitch is. That's a golden unicorn in our opinion. So
So
Yeah,
here's then a
there's no hiding
technical
it.
like
yeah, exactly.
here's a
This one,
technical question then. How do you if you're a voice actor and you have like a glorious beard like yours, how do you record or how do you like talking to the mic without sort of having that sort of
It's
that
built-in
beard
soundproofing.
the beard cristled sound that essentially that can come up?
You know, I haven't really run into an issue where that's been an issue. If we needed to, we could obviously gel things back. You know, we could certainly put things back. And of course, we are paying attention to a lot of, jewelry or things in hair or things especially when it's a little colder outside and people have windbreakers type things on, or whatever. But I've never run into the facial hair being an issue, but we would work our way around it as we always do.
Oh, okay, cool.
I do gotta tell you though, Kevin. It just listening to you talk about how you all MacGyvered all these different soundproofing things. Again, going back to podcasting for dummies, I was like, yep, we talked about that, we talked about that, we talked about that, and it was always a running. I know people would laugh at us, would laugh at podcasters in the early days when we would all be in the closet,
Right.
and then suddenly people were like, they did it themselves, and they're like, oh wow, I can really do this, and then suddenly these same people who are recording in their closets are now doing stuff for Audible.
Right.
And-
Yeah.
The thing
Yeah.
that
And you can.
the thing,
yeah.
the thing that's funny about that, man, is that it's as recent as, I guess, there's the Avengers movie where there's a whole room of press out there, or are they real or are they just a bunch of podcasters, where that line comes out. But you know what, everybody who laughed at that and was like, yeah, podcasters aren't real, every one of those fuckers started a podcast during COVID.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Everyone
yeah.
there's get a microphone for like 6 months. Like, you know what?
Oh yeah.
Although I will admit, like basically, I remember my first podcast setup was around 2006, 2007. I Harry Pottered that shit because I was doing it underneath the stairs. Like that was my recording booth of choice.
Nice.
The thing that always drove me nuts though when I started working with these type of high performance mics were the little sounds that they were picking up, and I had to do a process of elimination, like where's that high pitched whine coming from? There was one time I was recording and I was just chatting away, and suddenly I noticed I was hearing this pop 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 pop, and I was like, oh my god, I got a short. It wasn't a short, but I kept hearing pop 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 pop. And again, 2006 around this time, Steve, and I'm looking around going, what is causing that? And then I happened to look down. I had an open soda can.
Ah, yeah.
And I'm like, are you
that'll do it.
shitting me? Are you shitting
Yeah.
me? And just recently there was one where I was hearing this high pitched whine, and my wife, I'm the great enabler. I also got my wife podcasting in New Zealand way back in the day, and now she's here and she's trying to help me. Like, what is causing that noise? What is causing that noise? And we're trying to find this high pitched whine. We found out it was the Stream Deck.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
I'm like that is the stuff that drives me bananas.
So actually, I was going to ask. So Kevin, like with the whole setups from home, have you had like situations where you would hear this like electronic hum in any of the recordings? Because
Oh, yeah.
I had that issue with my Go XLR for some reason, and I found out essentially it was because of I had a softbox light that the cable wasn't really that grounded, and I'm like, I didn't even think about that was being a thing. And I was thinking, I'm like, I got to replace this thing.
Right.
Did you have anybody like that?
Yeah. Oh my God, we had everything under the sun. First off, you got to realize, I'm not sure we could have pulled this off even 3-4 years ago just with what home bandwidth was, right? So my wife is working from home too. She's on 2 streams at once. I'm running up to 4, right? So we're doing 6 streams out of the house. There's no way our internet service could have held that a few years ago, right? So just that alone. But then, yes, those things, I mean, there's things that when you record all the time, you start to learn or know. You talk about resonant frequencies. Just having a lot of people have metal water bottles and things like that. Any metal, you were talking about a can. I would never have a can in the room with us because even certain ceramics and things will pick up on resonant frequencies. I have my desk. That is metal legs on an actual professional audio desk that I had to stuff with the little Auralex because they resonate at a certain frequency, you know? So all those kinds of things, yeah, it's a real education for a lot of people of like what, even when, you know, you end up where people started getting more and more whisper rooms or the bricks one as well.
Yeah.
And they would feel like, oh, cool, I made this expensive purchase, I'm in it, and this should just totally work and it's magic. It never is magic. There are no answers. Because you can still hear the room in there because it's a square, right?
Right.
So even teaching people about angles so you don't have these standing wave issues or whatever else that happens, you know, that kind of thing. So people will think, oh, okay, all I need is the right piece of gear and then I'm cool. And it's just not. And that's why engineers who are real engineers have a depth of knowledge of workable knowledge that it takes a specialized person to actually know, right, and kind of experience. So, yes, another thing that happened that you never thought in your life you would ever have to ask somebody when scheduling them and say, is it lawn day? Is it trash day? Right? Because we'll hear those
God
trucks.
God forbid, if kids were still going to school.
Well,
you know,
except for God forbid, they were going from school at home, taking up some of your bandwidth as well.
Yep.
And then, of course, when mom and dad are around and kids around, they're gonna bust in every once in a while, or they'll be stomping around upstairs. And I mean, the amount of personal relationships we had in the sense of like, wow, we know each other a lot better than we did before because now I'm in your house, right? I mean, but yeah, you face everything, internet outage. I mean, I am definitely grayer because of last year, because of just the amount of times that somebody's internet would drop, you know, or whatever, and we're like
voice director / technical customer service.
Oh, dude,
no kidding. Totally.
And
meanwhile, all of us podcasters are over here, you know, pointing to you, Mr. Engineer, and going, "Now you know how we feel. Yeah, make your jokes now, pal. Make your jokes, pal. Our time has come."
Yeah, that's right.
We had it, you know, by October, we had everybody, like the running joke was we all could play buzzword bingo, right? So I think you're on mute. Can you see my slides? Like we had all those.
I am not a cat.
Right. Then we had we could all identify everybody's dog by the bark.
Sure.
And then I think like by October, I think we all memorized the first act of Hamilton because we're just like we just put it on, you know. So so it was definitely it was the contrast. And I think it was Brandon's question, which was like, how early did you know? And Bungie, God bless Bungie for here's your laptop. Like the IT ops part of Bungie was like, this is not a 2-week thing, dude. This is a, like, we have no idea. And
didn't they
everybody
say
thought it was 2 weeks? We're 8 months in. We're like,
didn't they say,
thank
Nick?
God we had foresight.
If I remember, Nick, there was something where they were doing a Vidoc about it, where Bungie was doing a Vidoc, and they said on an average IT fielded like 100 tickets per month. In the first month of COVID, they had to process like 16,000 or something like that because everybody was making that adjustment. And the fact, you know, I mean, because this is not going to be in the podcast, but this is just in the stream, so we're a little more casual. There were some games that I played in 2020 that I can say we're not ready for prime time. And the fact that they were saying, well, it was because of COVID. I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Beyond Light came out during COVID. The Last of Us Part 2 came out during COVID. Ghost of Tsushima came out during COVID. You know, I mean,
so badass.
I refuse to. I'm sorry. Testify. Manhunter, the most underrated video game of 2020. Manhunter came out in COVID, and the
Maneater.
Maneater. You're a shark. You know, I mean, that's. I mean, come on. I mean, that couldn't have been. That's like the dog ate my homework. The fact that
there's so many. But the thing is like I'm hesitant to say you could have, because again, so much goes on in order to make games happen. It's
That's
so
true.
Yep.
interdisciplinary,
Absolutely.
right? You have no idea. None of us do know where they were in the process that they either had to make the call. Because if you had to make the call, and like, for example, that other project I was working on was with Riot, and if we had to make the call and be like, we're going to push the game or have to reshape it, we don't know.
Right.
Luckily, we were able to pick it up within 2 months, but that might not have been possible depending on where they were in their development process or whatever. Now, there were other games that instantly made the decision that said, well, we just can't record voiceover. That's where it's short-sighted.
Right.
You can record voiceover, but that doesn't mean that it can go to according to plan, or that the way you were doing it, because maybe it was going to be a heavily ensemble style recording thing, and that really isn't so possible. I mean, animated shows started coming back online and kind of doing, group channel kind of stuff, but in games it's wholly different because we work in a lot of bucketized dialogue too, not just linear back and forth kind of thing. So you never know what caused. Now, certainly people make dumb decisions too, but I won't assume that's the case, especially because things were so crazy and just unknown. And then once you say, all right, we're going to pause for 4 weeks, that changes everything and might not be able to bring things back up online, especially if you had talent that was booked out 3 months after that. Now you can't get that talent, or whatever,
And playing devil's advocate, I mean, in those early months and those what I call the point between February and I want to say May. Mm-hmm. Everybody was just kind of like, what the hell are we doing? I was the example I would go to would be, and I knew I was going to work it in here somehow. Because of COVID, I've discovered a new passion of mine. It's Formula One racing. I didn't know I would like that until I found the Netflix documentary that had been lurking. And season 3 is set right at the beginning of COVID. And it is on the day they're supposed to race, the day of the day of the Australian Grand Prix, and they have an outbreak in the McLaren team of COVID. And on the day of the race, they said, we're pulling the plug. And even the racers were like, wait, we're here. What, let's do it. And they're like, no, we can't. And it was, so playing devil's advocate, I can see where, because like you said, there were a lot of people that just didn't have a plan. And from what it looked like, at least from what we saw from the sidelines with Bungie, it sounded like that Bungie and you guys all were like, okay, it's hitting the fan. Here's what we're going to do. And like you said, you hit the ground running. And I think that's... I
am proud of us for doing that. I am not taking away any of
You should be.
What we put into it, because we did. And everybody involved. Yeah. But definitely right at the beginning, there was, especially Adam and I, just testing all sorts of different scenarios and what could we possibly pull off, because we did not want to give up the opportunity to record exactly like what's come out now. We didn't want to miss that opportunity, right?
Yeah, especially for games that definitely had like that sort of where it can be COVID related for sure. Because like if you think about, technically there are studios for Nintendo. The reason why a lot of Nintendo games actually have been delayed is because it's cultural. Like they prefer to be able to work as a team in the same office, and working from home is just culturally not possible for them. So that's what caused a huge amount of delays. But there's a difference also as well. Like when you're working on a game, essentially, like the example is like if you're building a game, you're basically building the train at the station before it takes off. Whereas with Bungie and Destiny, the train left the station a long time ago, and you got to keep it running. Otherwise, you got a huge problem on your hands. So it's just like for those kind of games that are always ongoing, like that's just a whole other challenge even in of itself.
Bungie is Snowpiercer.
Building the plane in flight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Bungie is Snowpiercer. 1001 cars long. All right. All right. We should. I don't want to. Man, we could be here all night if we wanted to, but we should probably record the second half of the show.
No, we cannot.
And we're gonna lead in with some questions from chat. So that'll be fun. Then we'll get back to the questions that we have down. But remember, chat, if you have questions for Kevin McMullen, please feel free to throw those into the chat window. I'm keeping an eye on it. But if you don't ask questions, don't worry. We got some questions lined up for him as well.
We're doing the rejoiner in the right order, right?
Yes, and I'm just gonna just to make sure we're going to do a quick.
Thanks.
A quick. Yeah,
my head hurts enough already.
Of course, the rejoiner is, and we are back with the second half of Happy Hour from the Tower. I'm T.
I'm Nick.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Steve.
I'm Kevin.
There you go.
There it is.
There you
There
go.
you go.
There we go. There we go. Kevin, I need a little more emotion from you. I need you to.
What is emotion? If you're gonna say a word like emotion, that doesn't mean shit. You gotta really give me a context.
What
all right?
truly
Just give
is
him a line read.
Kevin?
Just give him a freaking line
We
read, and
need,
he'll be
you know,
okay.
you know what you need to say. Kevin, we'll have to splice it. We'll have to cut this and send it to you. Is when Joy was in with us.
Oh,
and
dear
gave
God.
Us and
Oh.
on failsafe, and it was the best thing I've ever heard.
Best
in my
rejoiner
whole-
ever. Best rejoiner
yes.
ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. She is. Anyway,
She's
Yep.
awesome.
all right. So we got that. Again, chat. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We really do appreciate it, and we're looking forward. I'm gonna get this timer started for the second half of the show. If we do go long, we go long. I'm okay with that. I'm more than okay with that. We'll make it a two-parter if we have to.
You're gonna have to be.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So, second half of Happy Hour from the Tower in 3, 2. And we are back with the second half of Happy Hour from the Tower. I'm T.
I'm Nick.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Steve.
I'm Kevin.
And we are talking about what Kevin does for Bungie and for all of us playing Destiny 2. He is the one who directs the voice talent. And let's be honest, there's some primo voice talent in Destiny 2. And this is
That
Kevin's
was solid. That was a solid performance, Kevin.
It
Let me
was.
just, like,
Yeah, that was good.
I mean-
yeah.
Better the second time around.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
better second time around.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no notes. No notes. You're totally fine. We just need an ABC take, and we're all right.
Mr. Mcmullen will be in his trailer. The green M&Ms are waiting for him. Thank you very much. All right, so we actually have some questions from chat for you. So first one is from Ms. Mayhem, and this does not necessarily have to apply to Destiny. It could either be a specific season in Destiny or some other title. What has been your favorite? Your dyed in the wool. Your as Pip would call it, the soul game. What is your favorite project that you've ever worked on? I know
Okay.
it's like picking your favorite kid, which is why we only
It
have
really
one.
is. It's more about kind of what made something significant and at what point in time, what coalesced in a way that stood out. For me, the first thing I ever voice directed as a voice director solely. So I came out, like I mentioned, I was at Ensemble Studios for about 10 years. My wife was as well. She was a level designer there. And then, unfortunately, in 2009, Microsoft decided it was a good idea to shut down the studio. For reasons. But either way, that had nothing to do with the studio. It had everything to do with Connect, but we can go into that at another time. But either way, but
The redheaded stepchild of Microsoft.
well, I mean, Connect was amazing technology.
Sure.
that I wish
It
we
was,
could
yeah.
have pulled off more and more with.
It's what got me and the daughter gaming. That's what
It was an amazing tool to just kind of open up, But I could go off on a whole. We can have an after show about.
Yes, we could.
Connect. But either way, so the first game I directed as a independent voiceover director, coming out to California, hoping for the best, not knowing what was going on. I mean, shoot, to make a sad story of it, we all lost our jobs. We were all family there, and I had met and married my wife there. And then it was like, what are we going to do? And this is 2008, 2009, so the economy is just doing all sorts of fun things down here, and our dog died at the same time, so we just dog dies, we're out here. I'm pulling into LA going, well, I hope I do this, and luckily 12 years later I'm still kind of doing it, so I guess something worked out. But the first game I directed was Crackdown 2. So I am a massive Crackdown fan. When Crackdown first came out, because of Halo, actually, it was included with or something like that. Something came along. Crackdown originally was released alongside of a Halo release or something like that, if I'm remembering that right. And I fell in love with it. And so the main voice in there is a guy named Michael McConaughey, and he's done a ton. That dude's a longtime veteran, and it made me, he's certainly not a household name by any means, but it made me so nervous that I was going to be working with the voice of the agency, as it were, as it was from the game. And so to go in for the first time, work on a project that I actually loved, was really excited to work on the next thing, and then kind of nervous about meeting, that was a celebrity moment for me. I mean, the people who make me react in the way of what people talk about when they have celebrity reactions or get nervous are the people that have meant something to me in one way or another. And that could be somebody that everybody knows or nobody's ever heard of. It doesn't matter. It's just about what's had an effect on me. So he was definitely one. And and since that point, I've worked with him so many times, and it's just been a blessing to have that opportunity. So Crackdown holds a high place because it being my first one, and I loved the series, and it kind of rolled everything up into one. I mentioned this last time, but to go Destiny, it is going to be hard to top the moment of when I recorded with Gina and Lance and we did the Cade Wake scene.
Yeah.
I mean,
we
that's
talked
still,
about
and I know
that.
I mentioned it last time, that still holds to where I'm still telling stories about it. If we get something that comes alongside of it, I'm like, oh, that kind of had the spark of this. Because I do want to say, we were referencing this a little bit before about, like I never even got to finish, Nick, answering your question about was it a decision to make the characters more deep or whatever? I really think it was just a progression of what we were allowed to do by the sake of the game existing for a while, and then we could build on it. And I think the turning point is Forsaken. I think Forsaken's storytelling elements and told this kind of walking the line between light and dark and all that kind of stuff. Those elements that allow you to get really rich. It was Forsaken that did it, and the top moment in Forsaken for me by far was Gina's Gina and Lance, but she started that scene, and I said this before, I think, when we were recording it, because we recorded it with both of them, which was so hard to get schedules together and stuff, so it was a really unique moment to have Gina and Lance, who had never worked together, so they were really excited to meet each other and work together, and as soon as Gina started, tears, things just go, and Lance,
all the feels.
Lance, who has amazing eyes, right? His
yeah.
eyes are incredible. I saw it in his eyes. He goes, well, shit, she's bringing it, so let's go. It was so broad. And so since that point, for me, I think actually, even if intellectually I knew what we could do with these characters in Destiny, I think that was the fully realized moment of the depth we could go to, of sort of a subtle conflict being shown there between two good guys who are on the same team, but they treat things differently. It's like, do we go after them or we stay home and protect ourselves? You know, that kind of thing. So all of these things kind of jumped off from that point, in my opinion. And I kind of hold that as a standard to try to achieve now, which I think is a very, very lofty standard, but we don't have lofty standards, and what are we doing? So, you know.
I think
they've
executed story-wise, like that might be where it diverges, right? Which is you get the line about, you know, the between the light and the darkness, and they've narratively done so well. It instead of it just going, how do we make the big bad even bigger and better, to like the last couple of villains we had, right? So Aramis is desperate. Like so desperate that they're gonna channel the darkness for a power itself to try to save their race. Mithrax is like, look, we still believe in the Great Machine. Like you have refugee camps of fallen. It's not like let's just make them bigger and badder and give them tanks and wings and and nuclear bombs. The story has just got right in that space.
I'll tell you a signifier that goes to that point of like the depth of the stories we're telling, and you talk about like refugee camps. We found ourselves having to be sensitive to the fact it's like, wow, we're talking about some real deal stuff.
Yeah.
And like things that definitely translate to things going on in the world, you know, very near our borders, so to speak, you know. Yeah. And we need to be sensitive, because if you are going to tell human stories, you're going to be touching on things that are very, very raw and sensitive for a lot of people. And now that we're doing that, kind of, I think, reinforces the fact that is what we are doing. We are telling very human stories.
And that's the sign of good science fiction. I mean, whenever you hear, I'm just going to come out and say it, whenever you hear butthurt fanboys that say, I don't, your science fiction is too political, I'm going to stick with Star Trek. I'm like, dude, you haven't been watching Star Trek then.
Yeah, you've been missing something.
Let this be the touchstone. Let this be your last battlefield, with Frank Gorshin having half of his face white and half of his face black. I mean, dude, if that isn't enough if that's not your clue by 4 to the head, then you really need to open up. And that is something that I applaud you all for tackling head on, because I'm watching this stuff and listening again. I love me some Sheree, but her dialogue as Lakshmi so far, just in the first week, has made me go, "Oh, honey bun, just easy, girl, easy."
We've
Yeah.
also for sure hit that part where Guardians literally like have to look at their hands and ask themselves, "Am I the bad guy?"
Yes.
Yeah,
Are we the
yeah.
baddies?
Are we the
Yeah,
baddies?
exactly.
We have
Yeah,
skulls. We have skulls in our armor. I don't think it's that big of a deal, Hans. No, really. Look at.
But it's so funny because the one of the missing
Nice
elements
pull.
from a story perspective, and Brandon, I'm gonna double down on what you just said, has been we've always been like, man, I wish they would do something with the affiliate quest, right? And we are. It's just not binary.
Right. Right.
And that's
No,
what makes it so much better.
No,
Right,
yeah,
right.
the binariness is kind of gone. You know,
Yeah.
and that's humanity right there. It's not binary. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, totally.
I still want to get into like a massive all-out gunfight alongside the Drifter. I won't lie.
You'll be shooting me, and we can't have that, or I will ground you for like weeks. So I'll ground you for a season. Never been.
How
grounded
is that
for a
going to
season
change
before.
anything?
Yeah, I think for like even for me, from my perspective, essentially because like again, like, because I jumped in on Forsaken when it started to be able to add in those shades of gray into the story. I never knew like essentially the very black and white aspect of the story for Destiny for that long. And for me, even still, like having those grays in there, to me it definitely felt like it was a little bit more of like, it felt like there was more of a struggle between light and dark, where we like than in other games we've kind of like we've always known you're the good guy, there's a bad guy, get rid of the bad guy, win game. And that's kind of always been that way. And technically in a way as well, in regards to these kind of games, Bungie sort of like initiated that with Halo. That sort of like that was kind of the storytelling for first person shooters kind of at that point. Now you could go back as far as Half-Life as sort of being that for narrative, but for me, jumping in with sort of the gray area of Destiny, I felt that struggle very early on. That was the thing I kind of realized, okay, there is something going on here. And this is before the darkness I never heard of it at all. It was just like, okay, there's something here. Like, it's just not as black and white as everything. And that's what I'm gravitating towards Destiny. Not the fact that it's like, okay, yeah, I would love to be able to be like sort of the White Knight kind of character in a sense, but having that kind of shades of gray opens up the door to so many other story ideas and elements that I've loved seeing where Bungie has gone in the directions that they've gone with this. And it's just really, really cool just to kind of like be a part of that story.
That was a big part of D1 as well, is like the first 2 years or so were really just light and dark kind of thing. Because even Oryx was a lot of just, I want to take over the system.
Right,
and then
right.
Rise of Iron showed up, and it was like the Fallen are desperate, and they are taking this self-replicating AI to try and reinforce their house and take back what was once theirs. Like, the motivation has clearly changed over and over. And then you get to like Gaul, who thinks that the Guardians aren't worthy of the light, and then like it just keeps going and going,
Right.
of just different unique motivations
Exactly.
that just tell so many different but really, really neat stories.
And so Steve hit the White Knight thing, and I think that in the writing you've seen the character who really was the White Knight and has probably considered themselves that the whole time, really challenge their own belief system and their own actions, and that's Zavala.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very much so.
100% the case. Yeah.
So,
Because, well, go ahead. Go ahead. No, actually, go ahead. Go ahead. Continue.
well, no, the funny thing is, that was the first question from chat. We have one more, and we are already 10 minutes into the second half. So,
Well, actually, because I do want to sort of like touch on a little bit of that, because I'm like, I mean, it just goes to show, like, because that's why I love when we were talking about essentially like Lance sort of like in a way he's sort of taken Zavala, because even in a lot of the characters that he plays outside of video games, it's always been that sort of very good guy type of of scenario. And from Fringe to from Fringe to John Wick, like just all of that in between. So we're really like, I'm loving hearing the nuances to his performance change as the game has gone on, and just especially with Season of the Chosen, where like his beliefs have fully been tested and challenged, and it's I was really enjoying that.
And to that, I give Lance tons of credit because, first off, as we all know, he's quite a Destiny player himself. And so
Yeah.
he has a vested interest in what happens within the universe as well, not just for his character or just because it's his job or whatever. He's actually personally wants to know and wants to. And so with Lance, a lot, I have conversations with him before we, especially when we're starting a new story or whatever, and talking about, well, going to be taking things in a little bit of different places, or whatever, and want to hear from him how he wants to do it too. He's very much a collaborator in that way, and I really appreciate that from him. And he's put a lot into try to meet. He was really excited about getting the more existential issues coming for Zavala to kind of how to address those, how to expose those, And so it's been great working with him on this because he does appreciate it on such a deep level.
And again, going back to some of those existential and bigger than the characters' original legends were. I mean, you get all those subtleties. I mean, when Brandon O'Neill, which I wanted to tell you this real quick story. We had Brandon O'Neill on our show, and we said, so what's your future with this now that your character's gone? He's like, oh, I don't know. I'm just kind of hanging out and here in Seattle. We got it's fine. But I don't know. When they need me, they need me. 2 weeks later, he shows up on the game. And we're like, you lying sack of poo. You lying sack of poo. And
called an
on you,
NDA
Brandon.
there, T.
yeah, I don't care. I thought we were friends. But
I mean, speaking of nuance in regards to performances, especially with Brandon,
and I'm getting to that. The transition of Crow is I was calling him, and Brandon's like, no, T, you can't call him Aldrin anymore. I'm like, he will always be Aldrin to me. But then by the end of it, I'm like, no, he's Crow. He's Crow.
Yeah.
I want to give him a hug. I mean,
He is my favorite character.
he's
I love
wonderful.
him so
great.
much.
And on top of that, that moment where Zavala offers a hand to Crow, and somebody did that side by side shot of when
The exact same shot.
and it was the same shot. I'm like, oh my god, that's brilliant. And I mean,
Yeah.
again, kudos to you guys for getting the subtlety in the mocap, in the vocals, in every. It really is an absolutely beautiful beautiful moment, and I just got to say
Well,
thanks.
I got to give big props to Brandon as well. I can give big props to everybody we're going to mention, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're giving big props to this group, straight up. Well, I said I was going to mention. You have to wait till I mention you. But no. So Brandon, just like everybody, life happens. There are things in life you have to do and deal with. There were things at the time of some of his sessions that we had to work around, and he was such a trooper for making things come together and being able to get a lot of our sessions in to get the Crow stuff that you heard. I obviously wouldn't go into what the personal things are, but everybody has personal things, and I just want to give him a little extra shout out for being able to pull that off, because what a crazy thing to have to do. Not only it's not Aldrin, right? But it's Aldrin, but it's not Aldrin, right? So how do you find that balance and bring that in, and how do you make it an interesting story and not just revert back to Aldrinisms, but also not leave it completely behind so you don't get that touchstone?
Bungie
And
played
then-
into it too. There were a lot of little subtle things in the
Very.
text and dialogue that were
Oh,
just
yeah.
driving the nail deeper.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It was a fun thing to work on because that's a really kind of unique. The idea of guardians and how they come back to life and don't remember their past or whatever, but everybody else knows his past, right? And that's sort of that conflict that his character has to exist in. It is crazy. So it's cool.
So another question from chat. This one's from the Little Atari, and I'm sure the four of us, we have opinions on this, but let's talk to the pros. Best mic setup within a budget. What were you recommending to the actors, and you personally, what works? What is your go-to microphone?
For the home setup, I mean, thankfully there are so many good prosumer
yeah.
level things, right? I say probably the Rode NT1A.
Ooh, that's such a good
Do I
mic.
have that right? Which is totally affordable, in a good spot. As far as mics are concerned, I think that one's really good. There's the Audio Technica AT2020. Is that right? I got that. I think it's
Yeah,
2020, which again is affordable as well. I think those are really good options. Definitely, I like for the most, especially with voice work, if you need to own one mic, it needs to be a large diaphragm condenser mic. You know, a lot of people also were going to shotguns, which is spending a lot of money on your Sennheisers 416s or whatever, things like that, which we do use a lot in the booth. I actually find those are harder to use because there are a lot more, there's more disciplined things you have to do with them. Now, they actually have a more transparent sound. They don't add like the richness that a lot of the large diaphragm condensers can do. So I actually, when we do in studio, we actually use a KMR 81. We did a shootout for a long while of a 416 and a Neumann KMR 81 shotgun mic. And we just like the natural sort of, whatever, again, word salad, engineer word salad, you want to use transient, sort of whatever, you know, or transparency, I mean, you know, things like this. But at home, a good solid, maybe $200 to $400 large diaphragm, you know, condenser can get you in a lot of really good spaces. I'm on a 103 right now, and I'm not in any sort of environment I would record voice in. But if you can get to that point, the 103 is incredibly versatile, you know, but that's not super cheap. But you don't need to be thinking about, well, I don't have a U87 or something like that. You don't need a U87. In fact, you probably aren't using the U87 the way it should be if you have it at home. So in a lot of the cases.
So what about, do you have any recommendations for USB mics specifically? Or are you not a USB mic? Really?
I'm not at all. Yeah.
Really?
So then,
yeah.
I would say then obviously the streamer question, because there's two mics essentially that everyone seems to be gravitating towards, is either the Elgato Wave microphones, which is USB, or essentially this one, the Shure SM7B. Out of those two, you would prefer the SM7B?
SM7B.
But it does have, now a lot of times you'll need things like a cloud lifter on there or something like that to boost it, because it's a dynamic mic, not a powered mic, not a condenser mic. So it has a richness that ends up being a radio sound, which is great if you're going to do narration kind of stuff. The reason why I say the large diaphragm condenser is because it is going to get you the most well-rounded things. If you do need to get some close proximity stuff, especially if you're going to do some quiet and more textured, creaturey things. So we're talking about recording voiceover. That's what you're going to want. You're not going to want to be too narrow, and I think it's too narrow to have only a shotgun, you know, or whatever. This is my personal opinion. But either way, to have the versatility for the different types of jobs you're going to be doing, I think I wouldn't recommend going the dynamic mic route. But we have, and we do, and it's fine. I mean, it's not bad by any means. There are just things you need to pay attention to, like it doesn't react the same because it's not powered, you know, and so some of your more, if you want to be able to be a little bit further away from the mic and still get subtlety, you're just not going to get that. Putting enough pressure on the capsule and that kind of thing. So, you know, just for well-roundedness and being at home, one of those I think would be fine, and there's plenty that have been fine too. I mean, other people have used a lot of different mics as well. Same thing with preamps. I actually really like the Scarlett. I think, and we were talking about things going off the shelves.
Shout out! There's your mention, Brandon, right there.
Yeah,
there you go. So, like a lot of people instantly went for the Scarlett 2i2. I got a Scarlett right at the very beginning. I got an 18i20. Here's what I'm going through right now, and I do have a 2i2 and a 4i4 as well. I really kind of like the Scarlett, though it does have this sensitivity between like 11 and 2 on the gain is like super sensitive, and then after that, you need to move more to get. You know, that kind of thing. So this is where actors really got an education in the subtle movements of gain and what gain staging does, you know, and that kind of stuff. But a lot of people now seem to go the UA route as well, which is nice. The universal audio, it's nice because it puts it has a virtual, you know, interface as well. So if they're at their machine, but their box is somewhere away from them, they can still adjust the gain just off the machine, off the app, which is really handy. Part of the thing, like we were talking about USB mics and stuff, if it's possible, I want your computer way away. The thing we dealt with most was fan noise, right? So fan noise on the computer was a big issue, especially people going in closets and then having running streams and recording the whole time, because we record locally. That is different, right? So the main record is actually on their machine 9 times out of 10, unless we were doing a source connect thing or IPTTL or something, getting a higher, whatever, but a higher resolution. But for the most part, we wanted to record locally, so we had the purest, best, source, and then we would backup record, remotely. But so we would remote in with Zune, and we still do this. And our engineers, or me in some cases, will be running, whatever recording software they're running in the background. And if you go to a studio, you're using Pro Tools. If you're using home, everybody's using either Audacity or Logic or, or Twisted Wave or things like that. So we had to get really educated in all the different systems so we could remote in and know how to use them and stuff. And you run into issues of, this one won't run at 96K. We generally want to run at 9624 or 32 floating bit kind of thing. So there's all sorts of considerations that come in with each individual setup. But the Scarletts are great. The UAs are great. Those 2 microphones I mentioned are great. And there are even kits, like I think the Scarlett at Sweetwater, at least, they pair it up with like a Rode, I believe. There's some recording kits that, $500 or something like that. And it's like, the thing you can get with $500 now versus when I was a kid.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. So,
I will admit the sales reps at Sweetwater are really good, being able to pair like really good stuff to the Scarlett. I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah, they're great. So, so anyway,
they'll call you a lot.
The question. Yeah,
they will. They will. Yeah.
I have to give credit to a guy named Brian Loney, who's worked there for as long as I've been in the industry, and he still remembers me from like 22 years ago, and it blows my mind. So that's some good customer service right there. So I'll give him a little shout out that I didn't expect to give here today. But hey, here's a Sweetwater shout out to Brian Loney.
We'll make sure we'll make sure to put a Sweetwater link in the in the show notes.
They send you candy along with your stuff.
That's
Sweetwater.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. There you go.
We can use less Tootsie Rolls, but either way, whatever.
True. I'll agree with you on that one.
That's the other funny thing is if I walk into Brandon's room with a random set of Smarties, he's like, "You ordered from Sweetwater."
Speaking of Brandon, Brandon wanted to go on ahead and ask you about some of the casting choices that you've had for these past couple of seasons. Brandon, go.
Yeah. So, in terms of like the ones we don't know off the top of our heads, I think I speak for everyone. We were not expecting Mithrax this season,
right?
Because he was just out of the blue. But Mithrax, or Mizrax, as his actual name is. Varix, and then Ido, the AI in the Little Fallen City. Are you allowed to tell us about any of those?
Sure, yeah. So Mithrax is Andrew Morgado is his name. He's incredible. We were so happy to have him on for Mithrax because he's able to get... Mithrax is a very challenging character, again, because bad guy, right? No. Right, but is from the bad guy group. Yes. Well, not his refugee. Or so, whatever. So it goes, again, all that kind of like gray area kind of stuff. And to be able to do that, but still put like some creature voice in there, to a degree. And then Bungie tweaking it just a little bit. They do a little bit of tweaking. So Andrew Morgado is Mithrax, and he did a fantastic job, bang up job. Love him. He's really, really great. So I think I can say the Ido thing. I don't think there's any reason why not. So Ido actually is Britt, who is Ada. So she multi-purpose there.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
That's awesome.
Britt is amazing. I gotta say that about everybody, but luckily I'm in a position where I can, and it's really great. So
that reaction that you just heard, Kevin, was all of us when we were like, "Wait, Courtney Taylor is Amanda and Keitel? Like,
now,
what?
There you
go.
Yeah. So I landed that on Steve, and Steve was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's our girl Courtney." And he's like,
Courtney
"Get
was
out."
she was so excited to do it because it gets to stretch her legs a bit, and do something,
Sure.
and especially within that game where it's like Amanda is such an iconic voice, how do you go ahead and do something wholly different but still bring a full world to it too? So big ups to Courtney for pulling that off. And by the way, who was it you were asking? Oh, sorry, you were asking about Varix. That is D. Bradley Baker. So D.
Oh, I thought that was him.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Personalities to him. Great.
Yeah, anybody who knows any of D's stuff knows just how incredible and like otherworldly D is with his voice effects, but also his acting and stuff like that. So, and we had to take Varix into a new position too, as well. I mean, as far as like, you know, I mean, Varix was in a compromised space, you know, for this.
Oh, he was desperate.
Yeah. So that was, we didn't lean in with that before with Varix. So it's really great to open that up. And D did a great job. And D definitely holds a lot of ownership with Varix. So
we were talking about that. I think when we were playing Tuesday or Wednesday night, Steve, about you had a revelation about the fallen captains, and that's the thing about Varix is when you get the Varix and Aramis intro scene where you get he's just a vandal. He's not a kid. Like he's got fake arms, and it was just one of those. Like she just calls him on it like right away. Like Aramis is my favorite villain in a long time. Yeah, it not just in this game, but in a bunch. And but like that intro where like it's all or nothing. Like it's not because I'm sinister, twitchy mustache villain. It's our people need this, you know, to survive. The Guardians have been whipping our ass for a long time. Like we need something.
Even jumping on that, I think probably my favorite moment so far in the new season is literally in that kind of like one of the first few cinematics where you see Mithrax like leading refugees in the cave, and he's saying like the Guardian is coming, and they're like, is the Guardian gonna help? And I'm like, I could hear the fear in his voice, and that made me think,
if I remember correctly,
holy crap, I am the bad guy right now. Like I'm the Predator. Like what the hell?
Yeah, and if you remember, if I remember correctly, there was one of the Fallen that had some Smollen in her arms, and she held them just a little closer. Yeah, when she asked that, I'm just like, oh, this sucks, man.
Well, it's another really, really small but really amazing touch from I guess the art team. The sigil on the wall in the refuge is Saint's helmet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God! I didn't even know that. Shit.
I mean,
they're constantly thinking about that level. By the way, the developers are. You know, they really, really are thinking about that kind of level to really enrich the entire storytelling arc.
It shows.
And the entire experience. And the entire experience. I mean, that's the thing. I mean,
totally.
I remember Steve had the same reaction that I had when I'm like, wait a minute, we are in, and thank you for those bits. I do appreciate that, Knight. We are in the same map that we were when we were kicking the Fallen in for Scourge of the Past. And
because Scourge was another exact thing of like Rise of Iron, where they were scrapping anything that they could to try and, as a last resort, live.
It also added a lot of resonance because Kevin is the kind of give a bit of background. Essentially, like yes, I am like legally blind, so being able to play games is still difficult. And my first raid ever was with T playing Scourge, and then when he pointed that out, that was the same map, and I was freaking out because I'm like, I remember being in here and very visceral moments of I was scared because I'd never done a raid before, like so I was afraid I was going to screw up, and then just be standing in the same spots where I was because I felt like, okay, if I stand here in this corner, I'm going to be okay, but I'm like I don't like, and it's the same. It's now I'm basically in the refugee camp. I was just like, that hit home a lot for me, and I was like, oh God, that was just such a surreal moment.
So for you as a voice director, I mean, how does that process work? I mean, do you get like the story beforehand, and then you get to read it, and you go,
God, wouldn't that be great? Let me just tell you about game development in general. Everything's on fire until the very moment you put it out, and then the new fire comes up, and then that's just how it goes. So there is not a whole lot of, because it is very much building the plane in flight. So the narrative team might have written an incredible thread. They worked with the designers, and then they're ready to record, and then the designers go, oh, hey, real quick, we just made this minor change. And you go, minor? That's not minor at all. That totally affects us, right? So, there's all these interdependent things. So the story actually doesn't even exist until it does. It kind of works that way. Yes, of course, there are plans and mapped out things, and the teams are talking and working things out, but it ultimately doesn't exist until it does, and then you realize what it is, that kind of thing. For me, and with Bungie in particular, because of my developer background, I'm actually a little more integrated than your standard director, because I just happen to speak the language and have the techniques and skill sets to do the development side of things. And so I kind of weave in and out, and I'm a little more embedded. And specifically, my relationship with Bungie was built on that. That's not the case with every single project I do. But I am, in fact, I'm a badge holding Bungie vendor kind of member, or whatever. So I'm integrated into where I do a whole lot of sort of check-ins with them and understand where they're going to go. We're talking about stuff we're doing in 6 months from now, even though we have a lot of stuff in the interim, and where it's going to take off and where things lead us to, which is why I always get nervous about talking about these things, because I'm like, am I saying something that's out yet or not? But either way, so I tend to err on the side of caution. But either way, so yes, I'm involved, thankfully. I force myself to be involved. I don't understand the idea of going to a session and being shown the script the day of and going like, okay, go for it. It's like, I just can't work that way. I've got to understand how it integrates both with the process and the previous story and other things like that. And so I'm a lot more involved in that side of things. Wanted to talk about casting real quick, because we were talking about casting, just to kind of illuminate a little bit how the standard casting process goes for voiceover actors. Normally we will put together character sheets, which should have some sort of visual image, whether it's of the character or of character influences. It might be other artwork from movies or other games and things like that, with little descriptors of kind of the sound of the voice and the background of the character, and then maybe a little paragraph or two of the background and that kind of stuff, and then sides, so example lines. And then actors are doing that. That's all the direction they get, and they just do it at home. They might have a stack of character sheets and sides to go through that day for all different projects, and then those get submitted to us. We'll go through hundreds of submitted auditions or whatever, trying to narrow it down. So part of what I do is work with Bungie to actually create those sides and character sheets in a way. I have a particular format I like that seems to answer a lot of the things, and try to mitigate as best as possible that they're not directed. They're doing it on their own. Then when we can, and we do this on our major characters, we will do callbacks, which is where we have like 5 to 10 of the our top choices for people, and then do a little 20-minute session with them and do a little more exploration. And for me, I'm actually, when I do those, I'm directing lines in ways that they won't even go into the game that way. I need to know how good the actor is at moving from A to B on in an instant, or A to Z if it happens to be that way or whatever. So I'm doing a lot of sort of technical tests as well in those callbacks, and then we pick who we're going to go with. And a lot of times that informs when you're working with actors correctly, the way to work with them is to allow stuff to come back from them. Don't just dictate them. You don't just shove it on them and say, do this. It's why I don't do line reads too by default. They don't mind line reads actually more than that, but when it's appropriate, Right. But for the most part, you try to give them the best context and a little guidance. And then part of my technique that I have to be good at is how to do it for each individual. It's sort of like a little bit of a psychologist, how to do it with each individual actor, and I'm working really, really hard all the time processing that information, even with people that I know. But either way, so as far as the casting and doing things like Mithrax, we casted, or Aramis, which by the way is an actor named Sally Safiotti, and she is awesome. And like being able to pull off this nuance with this creature, and also like female creature stuff you don't hear as much as you do just the big bad deep voice and deeper voice and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really nice to have Keitel and to have Aramis and that kind of thing going on. Anyway, doing those kinds of castings during the pandemic was an extra challenge, because I still had to do all these. You have to realize too, it's a little bit of pressure. Though I don't feel it like pressure anymore, but it's very expensive to do voiceover sessions. It's very expensive to make any decision.
Sure.
Every minute is costly.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not something in the system. Unfortunately, voiceover development, and being an audio guy myself, I always say, to kind of use what the phrase of the redheaded stepchild, if I can do that without offending anybody, the audio side of things has sort of been in that role forever. Art and programming and design get a lot of attention, and audio is this mystery black box of folks who just make things happen, right? Sound happens. I don't understand how sound happens, but I know it happens. Therefore, I can shove it at the end and it'll be fine. And then voiceover somewhere down there under that, right? Especially because a lot of people have voices and say, "Oh, I have a voice. I kind of understand what that's about." No, you don't. Just so you know.
But then they get clobbered as being the red-headed half-breed stepchild,
Right.
because then you have the argument of voice actors aren't real actors, and that whole
Oh yeah,
insane.
I think,
Yeah.
and I think more and
Yeah.
more. I think more and more that is realized first off by how many on-camera folks are now, behind the mic too, have realized how much it is unique.
Oh,
and
yeah.
specifically for games. There's nothing like games because it's interactive. The player dictates a lot of the time how things are going to unfold, and that's going to be 18 different ways or whatever it might be. And then like I say, this bucketized dialogue. So if I have 10 lines that say, hey, there's 3 zombies around the corner and then 3 variations, how are you going to do it to where you can still keep it rich, but it's communicating the right information that's going to be understandable because the player needs to know, because we're actually really nothing more than a UI element and a beep, or something like that. So it is tricky and multifaceted and multi-layered to do game VO specifically and then VO, and it is a discipline unto itself. But ultimately, when people come up to me and say, hey, I have a good voice, or people tell me I have a good voice, how do I do this? My first question is, do you act, right? Because that's the key. The voice is kind of key too, yeah, but the key is act, and then being able to react to the different kind of situations you might be in. And project to project, it's wholly different. Heck, the personnel, even at the narrative team at Bungie, is different than it was 18 months ago, and that kind of thing. So you have all these different voices trying to do the same thing, trying to keep it, I could go on and on and on about how complicated and how much of a unique discipline it is, unto itself. And what's been interesting, having been in the game as long as I have, is when I first started out, voice actors that we would hire, and this was in Dallas, and we were just hiring locally in Dallas at the time, and they just recognized it as a CD-ROM project. That's what it would say on the contract or whatever. It's like, I'm working on a CD-ROM project. I don't understand games. I don't know, whatever. And at that time, dialogue was not, voiceover wasn't really as well integrated, and we didn't have the technology to be as rich in game as we are now, right?
Sure.
And so, but over time, I started to find people who were gamers and actors, and they at least understood the jargon, and that would be like the mid-aughts, I would say. There's like, where more often than not, you'd start getting actors that were like, at least they were gamers, so they kind of knew the concept of, this kind of bucketized stuff or whatever it might be. Then now, you have a whole generation of people who are specifically voice actors for games because that's what they wanted to be. And I love that. I love that is now, that did not exist when I even started. It just did not exist that people were like, I'm going to grow up and be a voiceover actor in games. But now it is. And so people are focusing on it as a goal. That's where they want to express themselves, And as an artist myself, I'm like always looking for places just to express myself, professionally or otherwise. And like, that's great that people are driven to, because of performances that have been in games, is grabbing them just like a rock star would or a movie star would or whatever it might be, And I think that's so great.
I would argue now there's another class of actor. It's the actor that, kind of like the Frank Langellas, the ones who have never been in a video game, but they're like, oh, this is cool to be in a video game, because my grandkids think it'd be really cool if I was in a video game. Like, I remember when I was playing Last of Us, and Steve said, okay, we got a character coming up and you should recognize that voice. And I'm listening and I'm going, is that Felix Leiter from Casino Royale? Is that Bernard from Westworld? And Steve was like, nailed it. And I mean, and just being able to pick those voices, being able to hear, these established actors who now are like, yeah, I want to be in a video game now because that's cool. It's almost like a badge of honor.
The other way around, where it's like the actors who specifically are gamers or want to get into it because of gaming, where they go, so what's my motivation for this? And you go, this is the tutorial. If you don't do this right, the person doesn't know how to use the gun, and they'll throw the game away in 10 minutes. So let's get that down.
So wow, we've had such a great time with you as always, Kevin. And I mean, shoot, anytime you want to come on the show, anytime you want to talk, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Where can people find you online, and what have you got coming down the pike for you?
Oh boy, we're already to that. I'll stay for another 23 minutes if you want me. I don't know what your schedules are, but that's what I have. Just like last time, I still don't have much of a presence. So, because you can find me at my Instagram account, really. I don't talk on Twitter. I don't tend to talk. I tend to just work if I can. That said, I will say this here at the beginning of the pandemic. So I am a musician and I perform live a lot. That's just
You've
when I
got
was
lots of COVID songs because
I
on your Instagram there are a lot of COVID.
well, that's the thing is like I never ever had done anything like that until the beginning. I was like, I need to be playing music still, and so my drums are actually sitting right here, which they don't normally sit here except for the last year. They are right there, and I did do like I did the theme song for the Egyptians or the in Age of Mythology because I use this Egyptian oud that I have still as like decoration in my house, and I was like, I'm gonna pull that down and play that song live and film it and put it on YouTube. So you can look up my name in YouTube. I have a channel and I put a few videos up there, and unfortunately or fortunately, one thing about the pandemic is that somehow I've been working even more because I don't have the commute that you get in LA where there's like the hour and a half. So I can do sessions that were impossible to pull off. Where if I was in the morning in the West Side and then in the afternoon in Burbank, I could never pull that off. There's no time to do that. Now I can. And now it has made it even more gray than nature was ready to make me gray, because going from project to project and keeping your head on a swivel is insane. And so it's been really, really hard to manage. But either way, I haven't had the time to do as many music videos as I wanted, because I'm ham-fisting my way through any sort of video editing. I spend 90% of my time on Google trying to figure out how to ask the right question. I just want the video to do this thing. I don't know what words to say, and that kind of stuff. So I definitely had a lot of fun doing that, but go check out those videos on we have, in fact, our friend Morla, Eris Morn, we were doing a session with Eris, and Morla had seen one of the videos. This is early on. This is in April or May or something like that. And last year, and she had seen one of my videos and was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And I was like, "You want to do one with me?" And she was like, "Sure." And I was like, "What song do you want to do?" And that morning, she had been singing "French Fries with Pepper," which is a Morphine song, around the house. I said, "Sure." And I sent her a demo of it like 2 hours later. And I said, "We'll do this." And so, so you can go see Eris Morn sing a Morphine song. So it's
link will be in the show notes. Link will be in the show notes.
Yeah, go check it out. She did a great job, and then also included there is my saxophonist from my band, the LA Hootenanny, which we're waiting to get back together and play again. So it was nice to be able to play with some of my bandmates and things like that too, distantly. But anyway, yeah. Otherwise, I just don't keep a social presence. Maybe I should, but I haven't yet. And I just found out apparently the website that I made 12 years ago that I haven't updated since then doesn't open anymore too. So I apologize it doesn't have any good information anyway. So hit me up on Instagram if you want. I think it's Kevin_McMullen, I think is what it is.
It is.
Thank you. So I'll show up there occasionally, or whatever. But again, I'm just not comfortable with like promoting myself, but I like sharing things with friends like music and stuff like that, which is why I have a lot of records you'll see me play, and I'll say, here's what I'm listening to, check it out.
And we're good,
a lot of vinyl. A lot of vinyl.
Nothing wrong with that. And as far as where you can find us online, of course, there's happyhourfromthetower.com. You can also drop us a line at podcast@happyhourfromthetower.com, and you can also drop us a voicemail at 703-791-1701. And of course, you can catch us live on Twitch at this address, which is twitch.tv/The Tea Monster. Kevin, again, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Steve, thanks for sitting in with us. We certainly do appreciate it. Guys, as always,
Thank you.
great show. And remember, folks, that Happy Hour from the Tower, let's see if I can remember this one, is protected by a non-commercial, no derivative, share alike United States 3.0 license. You can find out more about the license at creativecommons.org. Ooh, got a little tongue-tied there, but I think I got it. All right, there.
We'll stumble.
Time to wrap it up. So eyes up, Guardian. Time to give up the ghost. The first round's on us. And that's it. That's it. Whew, man, oh, Chevy.
We hardly got to anything.
Oh, my God.
God.
I think this is going to be a two-parter show because I have us
I'm
down.
up for it.
I have us down as recording for nearly 2 hours, like 1 hour, like just the backup recording is at 1 hour and 40 minutes.
We can definitely bring Kevin back on.
Hell yeah! We barely touched any of the stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, not sorry, because it's
No,
like I just get excited.
don't ever apologize.
And I did want to fit in a shout out, and I didn't, to you guys because, and I will when we do this again officially. But if we're still even streaming right now, I just want to be able to say that because the dumb phrase of like, you guys are what it's all about is actually really true. And it's just, it's awesome to see because it is very hard to understand the impact of what you're going to be doing. You are so myopic again when you're in session, when you're looking at the littlest tiny things, and that you guys realize it in a way that is the finishing touch, right? You know, it's not done when we ship it. It's done when people have experienced it and integrated it into their own lives and however they do that, you know. And thank you guys for being a really amazing mouthpiece for that side of the experience, which is really kind of the capper of what it's all about. So appreciate what you do.
No.
And I will say that again on officially too if we do this again. So,
Well, you're welcome. I mean, oh, wait a minute. Did we get a bumper from you last time you were on here?
I don't recall. I'm sorry. So if we need one, I'll give you one.
Let's do that. Right, let's do that right now. So, comms quiet. Let's go ahead and let's do this.
All right. So what format do you
sorry.
want me to
We
do
should
that
just
in?
say. Man, we are so out of practice. You can just say hi. This is Kevin McMullen, voice director of Destiny, and you are listening to Happy Hour from the Tower.
Okay. Hey, this is Kevin McMullen, voice director of Destiny and many other things too, and you are listening to Happy Hour from the Tower.
We're gonna do one more.
Yep.
And this time we want you to say, "Hey, this is Kevin. This is the voice director of Destiny, and eyes up, Guardian. You are listening to Happy Hour from the Tower."
Okay. Hey, it's Kevin McMullen. I am a voice director of Destiny, and eyes up, Guardian. You are listening to Happy Hour from the Tower.
Nailed it. First take. Checks in the mail.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Now I got to figure out like what to bribe you with to get Morla on the show because I've been
So,
trying to make
I know-
for a long time.
I know, and there's only so much. She's a good friend of mine, and I have brought it up a couple times, and she wants to do it. Are we still streaming?
We are still
Yeah,
streaming.
yeah.
So we'll talk about it later.
Okay,
Yeah,
but I tell you what.
do.
Let me go on ahead and wrap up stream chat. I'm gonna do the. I'm gonna go on ahead and do auto host. Let the auto host do its thing. Thank you all so freaking much. You've made Kevin feel right at home.
Yes.
So
Thank you
good.
for all those tips, bits, subs, hosts, and auto hosts. Thanks for watching. We are back. I don't know when our next show is going to be. It's kind of tough to do around COVID time, but you know what? Things are starting to slowly come to normal. I may be able to even get the guys back in studio, but we really appreciate it. Steve, again, thanks for sitting in with us. Feel free to hang out with us a little longer. And we're calling it a stream, so take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.